Good evening, everybody. The Music Fan is back, bringing smiles to the faces, knowledge to the people, and most importantly, music to the masses. And I am back with Are You In? Tonight, I'm taking a look at the debut album from Half Alive, entitled Now, Not Yet. Half Alive is an indie pop, alt-rock, dance pop, electro-pop, electronic rock band from Long Beach, California. Members include lead singer Josh Taylor, drummer Britt Creamer, and bassist Jay Tyler Johnson. This is a band that came a little bit out of nowhere for me. I don't remember exactly how I got onto this particular song, but as I was listening to other things on YouTube while on break at work, my YouTube shuffled to a song called Still Feel. What started as a cursory listen turned into an earworm. This song was incredible to me. It was one of my favorite songs of 2018 and still could be entitled for my favorite song of 2019. I won't get necessarily into all the details just yet because of course I'm going to gush all about it as we go over this album. Basically though, it got me really excited for a band that I have never heard of, and I wanted to keep an eye and ear out for anything else that they put out, because I would be really curious to see how this band can do a full album. Finally, found out that they dropped an album about a week ago and checked it out to see if they could live up to the hype of this particular song. And yes and no. So the phrase that I'm going to use throughout a lot of this, and the key theme of this album, is experimenting in familiarity. What I mean by that is this band wears their influences on their sleeve. As you listen to different songs on this album, you can definitely hear where they're getting their inspirations from. However, I will also say that in these songs, you also hear a little bit of experimentation that makes each of their songs a little bit different, for better or for worse. Some of the better songs include Still Feel. Let's dive right into that. This particular song meshes a little bit of what Two Door Cinema Club likes to do with some electronic EDM, trap, current hip-hop beats. Now you may be asking yourself, how the heck does that work? Well, let's break it down. So the verses feel a little bit more funky, a little bit more disco. It has a really interesting jazzy chord progression, and the bass is absolutely killer. It's one of my favorite bass lines on the album. It gives a lot of movement to an arrangement at that point in time that doesn't have a lot of movement. You have drums, yes, but you don't really have any guitar. You just really have synths other than that. The melody, fantastic, and it eventually gets to a pre-chorus that shows off Taylor's falsetto. And then what caught me off guard the first time around, and I still love it, is this change into this more trap, hip-hop, EDM feel, this vibe of slowing it down a little bit, making it a little bit heavier, making it a little bit more electronic. It is different, but it feels so right for this song. It's just really cool how it gets to there. The chord progression's really cool, has a little bit of jazz elements, and then eventually goes back to the original feel and adds a little bit of guitar. Even the bridge is so interesting. It builds up really nicely. It has some great harmonies. And then, for a trick, it doesn't go back to that hip-hop feel at the end. What it goes back to is the funky disco vibe, giving it a little bit more energy at the end. And Taylor uses some of the strongest vocals on the album. The horn parts at the end add a nice touch to a really incredible song. Also, if you are watching this album review and you haven't listened to this song and you haven't seen the video for it, you need to. It's really cool. Really, really cool choreography and just shot in a really interesting way. Going forward, we also get Trust, which starts off really beautiful, really atmospheric, with some synths and then some like beautiful horn lines with really jazzy chord progressions. And then it eventually gets into the meat of the arrangement that has this 21 Pilots feel. The backbeat really screams 21 Pilots. Though what's cool is the chord progression is different. It's definitely very jazzy, goes from C sharp minor to B diminished to A, making for a really crunchy and interesting verse chord progression. Taylor really has a Tyler Joseph vibe to these particular lyrics. The melody is really nice. It's also very stream of consciousness idea, talking about the idea of trust, whether it's in another person or faith and religion. I also really like the staccato chorus. Really nice. And the pre-chorus also has some beautiful colors in there as well. I will say one little part that gets a little bit boring comparatively to the experimentation on this album is the bridge. It does start getting to a more of a shuffle kind of feel. It makes it a little bit boring comparatively to what is going on, because I love the drum work on most of this song, especially when we get to the pre-chorus and Brett Kramer is using more of the hi-hats. It gives a nice sense of progression, and then it feels like that shuffle kind of lessens that progression, though it does build nicely to the outro. Arrow feels again like a Two Door Cinema Club song, closer to Beacon era than the last two albums. I really enjoy what this particular song does. It does have some nice chord progressions at the beginning that are very jazzy and very colorful. It does change a little bit with the meat of the song, but the song is really enjoyable. I enjoy the melody on here. The bass and drum parts are also really solid, especially when you get to the more of the shuffle on the chorus. I also enjoy the change up of the melody on the chorus, and the timing of the chorus at the end gives it a little bit more oomph to this song. And it's really interesting, like doing like a really quick comparison. The two bands I've talked about so far are bands that, you know, stray away from the norm of a full-on rock band with, you know, having singer, guitarist, bassist, drummer. All these bands are trios or duos, so you're missing one part, whether it's a guitarist for this band or the drummer for Two Door Cinema Club or the quartet when it comes to 21 Pilots. Continuing along, we get Runaway. That feels, again, a little bit like a 21 Pilots song. The energy on this is great. Taylor's falsetto is really nice on the chorus. It's just really active on the verse, both the percussion and the actual melody. That's where you get a little bit of that 21 Pilots vibe, though it feels a little bit more indie and electronic than 21 Pilots. It is shortened, but it's a fun song. Maybe Going Again feels like a Two Door Cinema Club song. It's laid back, it has nice jazz tinges, and even has a really nice synth line that's just really fun. The melody is pretty standard, but the chorus makes up for it, especially the layered harmonies on there. Again, feels a little bit more like Beacon era Two Door Cinema Club than the last two albums. Then you get a more Bon Iver song with Breakfast, very atmospheric, a lot of vocals overlaid with electronic enhancements, and it makes for a little bit of a nice reprieve from what else is on this album, because this is one of the only atmospheric songs on the album. The flowing piano later on the piece is really nice, and the melody itself is beautiful. Unlike some Bon Iver songs, especially with his more recent work, none of this feels really cluttered. It has just a really nice flow in general, and it even mimics parts of Pure Gold, which we'll get to a little bit later. Okay Okay, the opener of the album, feels like a Gautier song, so you're seeing even more influences. A really nice simplistic arrangement with layered electronic parts. Taylor is a little bit weak on the vocals here, but I just like the vibe, and I like how this song eventually gets into a flowing 6/8, even though at the beginning with the melody it feels like it's in 3/4. The chorus melody is really solid, building a little bit of arpeggiated melody lines. The transitions into the bridge are experimental, and I give them a lot of credit for what they try to do. However, the way that they transition key-wise into the last chorus, it gets a little bit clunky, and overall it makes a little bit of this song feel clunkier than it should be, which is why it's a little bit lower in my rankings for this album. Also, the electric saxes aren't really needed for the song. Neither is that distorted guitar at the beginning. When you have that as your first cue for the album, it feels a little bit weird. The rest of the album doesn't really pull one way or another from any particular influences that I can see, but these are where we get to some of the weaker songs on the album. Pure Gold, it's starting to grow a little bit on me, but it's still a little bit one of the more mainstream songs on the album. Don't get me wrong, it's very interesting. I like the playful nature of both the vocals and how they interact with the piano part, and even the melody on the verses. Very nice, very soft, very interesting. However, the quirkiness of the verses gets easily replaced by how bland the pre-choruses and the choruses are. They feel really throwaway, tries to feel a little bit more modern and mainstream from what they needed to be. And it's an experiment that I commend, but it doesn't work. And then Rest and Ice Cold, two of the more simplistic arrangements on the album. Yes, they do use some nice jazzy chord progressions, especially Ice Cold. And I will say Rest is a little bit better. I do enjoy the soulful arrangement, but it isn't the most interesting arrangement. And there are some timing things where, even though they are trying to experiment with it, it just doesn't necessarily work in an amazing way. Sam Hanshaw has a nice rap on here and it has some good vocals, but it just doesn't pan out. And then Ice Cold has an interesting chord progression on the verses. It's unfortunate, but Kimbra doesn't do really much of anything on this song. And I love Kimbra. And it's also really interesting that a band like this that has some similar vibes of Gotye uses Kimbra on one of their songs. The chorus is bland, and then Taylor rapping is really cheesy. It has a nice arrangement, but it's hindered by the vocals around it. And then Of the Notion, which is a spoken word interlude, which ties a little bit into Creature. The last song is Creature, longest song on the album. It's a decent closer. It starts well. It's actually really solid. The verses are understated, but really interesting. The pre-choruses are nice and have a beautiful melody and a beautiful chord progression. And the chorus even has some great power and some interesting harmonies around it, overlaid. However, the ending of the song almost ruins it. This stream of conscious, very plotty outro is almost unbearable to listen to. And then it transitions into a weird outro groove, and then eventually the conversation from Notion comes back in and resolves itself. It's unfortunate because this album starts really solid. Okay is just okay, but I do enjoy the experimenting there. Runaway, Maybe, Still Feel, Trust, Arrow, all those songs are in the first half. However, once you start getting past that, it starts to get weaker and weaker as the album goes on. Either the experimentations just don't mesh, or the songs are too bland. Lyrically, a lot of the songs on here talk about trust and finding yourself in the world, but also taking the time that you need to make yourself a better person. Maybe is talking about the battles we face inside every day that no one sees. Runaway is about facing oneself and being able to be comfortable with the flaws that we have. Still Feel is talking about dealing with out-of-body experiences and how to gain control of oneself. Arrow is trying to keep pace with life when it moves too fast. On the other end, Rest is talking about taking time to be better and feel better so that way you can be the most productive person and the best person you can be. Ice Cold is talking about looking on the brighter side of life and letting go of the pain of the past. Breakfast seems to be about being a safe haven for someone when choices get tough and life gets tough. Creature and Pure Gold seem to be dealing with faith, which is interesting. I didn't necessarily pin this band to be of the religious type. Not saying it's a bad thing, but the underlying religious themes in here kind of caught me off guard, because at first, if we go back to The Notion, which is a conversation about being open about something, at first I thought it was about depression, but it seems now it's about being open about faith in a time where faith isn't the most prevalent thing anymore, or there are some negative stereotypes when it comes to faith. Pure Gold is talking about finding faith in God in times of trouble, and Creature seems to be talking about how we are molded from God and how we strive for perfection but also need to be understanding of our faults and how our Creator created us. Whether you believe in that or not, totally understand it, and I understand if that puts you off on some of these songs. However, I tend to look past some of them for the most part. I do think that some of them do get a little bit preachy. Pure Gold, Creature do get a little bit preachy, but for the most part, it's a solid album dealing with one's personality, one's inner demons, and trying to reflect a more positive attitude while also finding the time to better oneself. This is kind of a frustrating album for me. I wish it was better than it was. I commend a lot of what this album tries to do. I think there's a lot of interesting experiments that separates some of the songs from the influences that they have. Still Feel, Arrow, Trust, for the most part, does enough interesting to make it stray away from the Two Door Cinema Club and the 21 Pilot influences. Runaway also kind of does enough to make it stray away from the 21 Pilots influences. Maybe kind of borders that line, as well as OK OK and Breakfast. I think those three are a little bit too close to the source material. I think there's enough on here that if you're an indie fan, you can get lost in, and you can find a lot of interesting arrangements. So this is hard because for the most part, I do enjoy most of this album. And even with some of the weaker songs, I think there's enough interesting there that you can get past it. However, at the same time, it does get hard to listen to the end of the album when you know that you've already gone past the best stuff. So my verdict, this is going to be tough, but my verdict is full playthrough. Yes, Creature doesn't end well. Yes, Ice Cold is very bland, but I think he had so much momentum for the first 7 songs, and there's enough interesting with Pure Gold, and Rest is serviceable enough that you can get past Ice Cold to get to an interesting and kind of a reprieve with Breakfast and with most of Creature, barring that ending part. I think there's enough here, experimentation-wise, that it would behoove you to listen to the whole album to see what they can do. I will say for next album, I would love to hear something a little bit more their own and a little bit more focused. I love the experimenting, and I would love to see more of what they can do. It just needs to have a little bit more focus and just a little bit better pacing at the end. But I am excited to see what else they can do. So that is my time. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you like or hate this album and your reasons why. Let me know other albums in 2019 you would like me to review. Share this with your friends, and most importantly, subscribe to my channel. That way I know that you enjoy what I'm doing and want to see what I can do to make this channel bigger and better. I'll be back with a brand new Are You In? And these 2 Are You Ins next week are going to be from some familiar faces. But you'll just have to wait and find out. Until then, this is a Music Fan, and I'm signing off.